In November 1787, the silence of prayer in Philadelphia's St. George's Church was shattered by the sound of footsteps walking out. It was not a retreat, but a revolution. When Richard Allen and his companions rose from their knees to exit the sanctuary that sought to segregate them, they were doing more than leaving a building. They were walking toward the birth of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first sovereign geography for Black Americans in a land that still viewed them as property. The narrative of American Christianity is often presented as a monolithic progression of European traditions adapted to a new frontier. However, such a perspective overlooks the profound transformation of the faith at the hands of those it initially sought to subjugate. Among the most pivotal figures in this transformation was Richard Allen, a man whose journey from the depths of chattel slavery to the pinnacle of ecclesiastical leadership redefined the boundaries of religious and social liberty in the early United States. Allen's life was not merely a personal triumph over adversity, it was a deliberate theological and institutional reclamation of dignity for a long-forgotten people. Born into bondage, Allen's spiritual awakening became the catalyst for a holistic vision of redemption that refused to separate the salvation of the soul from the liberation of the body. His commitment to the Methodist tradition, a movement characterized in its early years by emotional fervor and a plain and simple gospel, provided the framework through which he would eventually challenge the racial hierarchies of his day. By establishing the African Methodist Episcopal AME Church, Allen did more than found a denomination. He constructed an independent ecclesiastical space where African American leadership could flourish and where the spiritual gifts of a marginalized community were validated as divine. His legacy stands as a testament to the power of institutional autonomy in the face of systemic exclusion. The beginning of Richard Allen's ministry began in 1760 within the restrictive confines of the Philadelphia household of Daniel Chew. The subsequent financial instability of his next owner, Stokely Sturgis, led to a traumatic fracturing of the family unit as Allen's mother and 3 siblings were sold off to settle debts. This period of enslavement was defined by a persistent, crushing anxiety. The realization that his labor was never finished and his future was subject to the whims of creditors drove him to weep between the porch and the altar as he sought divine intervention. The transition from psychological bondage to spiritual certainty occurred in 1777 through the influence of Methodist itinerant preaching. At age 17, Allen experienced a classic Methodist awakening. He described the moment in visceral terms. The dungeon of his despair shook, the chains of his spiritual heavy-heartedness flew off, and he found himself filled with a glory to God. This internal liberation provided the necessary foundation for his external quest for freedom. Allen's strategy for navigating the complexities of religious life while enslaved was one of practical witness. By working with increased diligence and integrity, they sought to neutralize the argument that religion bred insurrection or laziness. Meetings that began in the kitchen, the domain of the servant, gradually migrated to the parlor, a space reserved for family and guests. The master began to join Allen in prayer, signaling a burgeoning recognition of their shared humanity under God. In the fall of 1779, Garretson delivered a sermon at the Sturgis residence based on Daniel 5:27, "Thou art weighed in the balance and art found wanting." This direct confrontation with the moral evil of slaveholding proved to be the final catalyst for Sturgis's own conversion. Convinced of the sinfulness of his position, Sturgis offered Allen and his brother the opportunity to purchase their manumission. In 1780, a formal contract was signed, stipulating that Allen would pay Sturgis a specific sum over 5 years. Allen labored tirelessly, eventually paying the final installment in August 1783, a full year and a half ahead of schedule. Upon securing his freedom, Allen obtained a written letter of manumission from Sturgis. He deposited it with the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. This document remains a landmark in the archives of American liberty, marking the official transition of Richard Allen from property to personhood. With his manumission papers in hand, Richard Allen entered a new phase of existence that was as much a physical journey as it was a theological one. The years immediately following his manumission were characterized by a restless evangelism. Between 1783 and 1786, Allen traversed the mid-Atlantic region, laboring as a sawyer and wagon driver to support himself. He preached the gospel in forests, private homes, and town squares. This period served as a rigorous apprenticeship in the Methodist itinerant tradition. The way Allen navigated this transition was through a total immersion in the circuit rider lifestyle. This era of Methodism was defined by an urgent, mobile spirituality that sought to reach the unchurched and the marginalized. By taking on grueling physical labor during the week and preaching multiple times on Sundays, Allen established a blueprint for the bivocational ministry that would become a hallmark of the early Black church. This dual role allowed him to maintain financial independence, a crucial necessity for a Black man in a society that viewed free persons of color with deep suspicion. In 1786, Allen's reputation reached the ears of Elder Willis, a leader at St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia. Allen was invited to preach specifically to the people of his own color, a request that highlighted both the opportunity for expansion and the underlying racial compartmentalization already present within the denomination. Allen accepted the call, arriving in Philadelphia in February 1786. His approach to ministry at St. George's was characterized by an unprecedented evangelical efficiency. He began preaching at 5 a.m. to accommodate the schedules of laborers and domestic servants. The results were immediate and overwhelming. When Allen arrived, the Black membership at St. George's was negligible. Within weeks, the numbers began to swell. He did not merely offer a path to heaven, he offered a sense of belonging and spiritual authority. As the Black congregation at St. George's grew, so did the need for a structure that could address needs beyond the purely liturgical. In April 1787, Allen, along with his colleague Absalom Jones and others, formed the Free African Society. This organization represented the first quasi-secular mutual aid society for people of African descent in the United States. The FAS was a training ground for governance where members practiced parliamentary procedures and managed budgets. The formation of the FAS also revealed a significant theological friction. While the society was influenced by the Quakers, their quietist, meditative style of worship clashed with Allen's Methodist fire. Allen found the Quaker-style silent worship to be insufficient for the emotional and spiritual needs of his people. He argued that the Methodist discipline was better suited to the African American temperament as it encouraged audible participation. The tension between the growing Black membership and the white leadership reached a breaking point in November 1787. Without prior notification, the leadership decided to segregate the seating, relegating the Black members to a newly constructed balcony. The execution of this policy led to one of the most iconic acts of religious protest in American history. During a Sunday morning service, Absalom Jones and Richard Allen entered the church and took their usual seats in the main floor area. While they were at prayer, a white trustee attempted to physically pull Jones from his knees, demanding he move to the gallery. Jones requested that the official wait until the prayer was over. When the trustee persisted and called for additional help to remove them, the prayer ended and the Black members rose as one. The decision to walk out in a body was not a spontaneous outburst of anger. It was a premeditated theological rejection of a compromised Christianity. By exiting the building, they were leaving an institution that had prioritized racial hierarchy over the image of God in all believers. This walkout was a declarative act of spiritual sovereignty. It signaled a transition from petitioning for inclusion to asserting independence, providing the momentum toward the creation of Mother Bethel. The physical separation from St. George's necessitated a tangible center for the community's spiritual life. This transition was marked by a shift from protest to property. For Allen, a church without a building was a movement without a home. In 1791, he purchased a lot at the corner of 6th and Lombard Streets. This site, a former blacksmith shop, carried deep symbolic resonance. It was a place of labor and transformation, where raw iron was hammered into useful tools. While Absalom Jones and a portion of the Free African Society moved toward the Protestant Episcopal Church, Allen remained steadfast in his commitment to Methodism. He believed the Methodist discipline was uniquely suited to the social and spiritual needs of his people. In 1794, the blacksmith shop was moved to the lot and converted into a house of worship. Bishop Francis Asbury dedicated the building, which was named Bethel. This act of dedication was a dual recognition. It validated Allen's congregation within the Methodist fold while establishing a physical boundary that white trustees could not cross. Bethel became a sovereign geography where Black Philadelphians could exercise a degree of autonomy unavailable elsewhere. The years following were defined by a prolonged legal and ecclesiastical siege. The white leadership of the Methodist Episcopal Church attempted to assert authority over its pulpit and its finances, claiming jurisdiction over all church property. Allen understood that spiritual independence was meaningless without legal protection. The conflict escalated into a series of pulpit battles. In one instance, a white elder attempted to force his way into the pulpit, only to be physically blocked by the congregation. To counter these encroachments, Allen and the trustees drafted the African Supplement in 1807. This document explicitly stated that the trustees of Bethel, and not the conference, held the power to decide who would preach in their building. The white leadership challenged this in the Pennsylvania courts, leading to a decade of litigation. The resolution finally arrived in 1816 when the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled in favor of Bethel. The court recognized the church as an independent entity, stripping the white elders of their power. This legal victory provided the structural blueprint for what would follow: the formation of a new independent denomination. The culmination of Allen's institutional vision occurred in April 1816. Recognizing that Black Methodists in other cities were facing similar pressures, Allen called for a convention in Philadelphia. Delegates from 5 African American congregations met at Bethel to forge a unified body. This was the birth of the AME Church, the first fully independent Black denomination in the United States. The convention's final act of sovereignty was the election of its own leadership. Daniel Coker was initially elected as the first bishop, but he declined. On April 11, 1816, Richard Allen was elected as the first bishop of the AME Church. By being consecrated by his peers and not by the white hierarchy, Allen's elevation was a pure expression of Black self-determination. It signaled the end of the tutelary phase of Black Christianity. While legal battles occupied his focus, Allen's leadership was tested by civic crises. During the yellow fever epidemic of 1793, as the city's structures collapsed, the Black community stepped into the vacuum of care. Dr. Benjamin Rush mistakenly believed people of African descent possessed a natural immunity. Allen viewed this as a moral imperative to demonstrate the character and indispensability of the Black citizenry. Allen mobilized the community as nurses, cart drivers, and grave diggers. It was a mission to show a city that often viewed them as a burden that they were, in fact, its lifeblood. The friction followed the epidemic. A publisher named Matthew Carey released a pamphlet accusing the Black community of profiteering. Allen and Jones responded with a rigorous, data-driven defense. This document was a masterpiece of apologetic journalism. By meticulously documenting expenses and lives lost, Allen and Jones dismantled the narrative. This was public relations as resistance. Allen now sat at the head of a national institution capable of ordaining its own ministers and charting its own destiny. The Black church was no longer an insular club. It was a vital pillar of the American fabric. Bishop Allen's vision for the AME Church was never limited to the sanctuary. He viewed the denomination as a socio-political engine for the advancement of the race. In 1830, Allen hosted the first of these conventions at Bethel. The gathering brought together delegates from across the North to debate strategies for education, economic self-sufficiency, and legal rights. One of the most defining aspects of Allen's later leadership was his staunch opposition to the American Colonization Society. While some considered the idea an escape, Allen saw it as a deceptive exile. He argued that their blood, sweat, and tears had been mixed with the soil of the nation, giving them a divine and legal claim to the land. Allen insisted that the promise of the American Revolution must be extended to all. Richard Allen transitioned from his earthly labors on March 26, 1831. At the time of his death, the AME Church had grown into a thriving denomination with thousands of members. His funeral was a massive public event in Philadelphia, a testament to his status as a national statesman of the African American community. The enduring impact of Allen's life is found in the institutional infrastructure he left behind. He provided a blueprint for independent Black organization that would be replicated in every sphere of life. Allen's journey reveals a parallel and foundational narrative of self-determination. From the blacksmith shop to the bishop's chair, he successfully navigated the complexities of a nation conceived in liberty yet birthed in slavery. Allen's legacy is found in the unapologetic dignity he modeled for his people. He taught a long-forgotten people that they were not orphans of history, but the architects of their own spiritual and social destiny. His life remains a testament to the belief that true freedom is not something granted by the state, but something claimed in the presence of God. The transition of Richard Allen in 1831 did not mark the end of his influence. Rather, it signaled the beginning of a monumental expansion. The church became a critical vehicle for the abolitionist movement, acting as a network of stations on the Underground Railroad. The impact of Allen's structural work is perhaps most visible in the realm of higher education. In 1856, the AME Church established Wilberforce University, the first college to be owned and operated by African Americans. While his primary focus was the United States, Allen's strategy possessed a global perspective. Black missionaries moved across the globe as sovereign ambassadors of their own faith, carrying the Methodist discipline back to ancestral lands. The enduring legacy of Richard Allen is also found in the cultural preservation of the Black experience. He ensured that the rhythms, the call and response, and the spiritual traditions would be protected from the sterilization of white ecclesiastical norms. In evaluating the life of Richard Allen, one must see him as more than a religious leader. He was a founding father of a different sort. While others debated the Bill of Rights, Allen was on the ground, constructing the actual mechanisms of liberty. He did not merely survive the systems of his day, he built new ones designed to outlast them. He is the indispensable architect of spiritual and social independence, a man who truly weighed the balance of his time and found the strength to tip the scales toward justice. The life of Richard Allen serves as a profound mirror for our own time. It challenges us to consider, where are we currently standing on our knees in spaces that no longer respect our dignity? Allen's walkout was not merely an exit, but an entrance into a life of sovereign purpose. Freedom, as Allen demonstrated, is rarely granted. It is architected through faith, labor, and the courage to move when the Spirit calls. If you found value in this deep dive into the architect of spiritual independence, consider joining our community here at Theology Today. Click the subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications to help us bring these long-forgotten stories to the forefront. Thank you for watching and for being part of this ongoing exploration into the ideas that define us.